Hello, everyone. William,
Hello.
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 John, Isabella,
Hello.
hello. Um, yeah, well, while we wait for people to enter, uh, what's new? Anything? Okay. I hope you're all doing well. Um, 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 um. Okay. Oh,
What
one
new?
remark
I,
is
there are
if
many
you,
things that are new. Well, okay, sorry.
uh, oh, Jose Luis Ambit,
well, actually, I pronounce it ambite, like you pronounce it.
Ambite. Okay,
But I
gotcha.
go now with ambit or ambite or any other version. But it just pronounced it a little.
Uh,
Um, I know this is not
yes,
what you wanted to. Maybe you know what you were asking about what's new. But I can tell you what's new in my life. I was scheduled to review proposals for NIH,
yes,
called a study panel in NIH parlance.
yes.
Tomorrow and Friday, and I spent the last 2 weeks, I mean, the last weeks reviewing these proposals. Is very hard, complicated. This
Yeah.
study section was canceled today.
Yes. Okay.
That's
And
actually a serious thing for people who means, I mean, it has been rescheduled without no date in sight.
I'm sorry to hear
right.
that.
Um, so I presume, maybe I'm wrong, that this has to do with Trump's actions. Is that the
You would,
situation? Huh?
yes, I mean, I suppose so. I mean,
Okay. That
like
that's
you don't cancel study sections for no good reason. This is what funds everybody's research. Just for people,
right.
people that don't know how this works. Like you send a proposal to the government to ask for money to do some research, then a bunch of people review it. I was one of those people that review it. Then you get a score, and then eventually, if it's a good score, you get funded, and that's how everybody gets funded. Well,
Uh,
most people get
yes. Yes.
funded.
And I, of course, am quite familiar with that. Um, I suspect a lot of people here are quite familiar with that
Yeah.
because, as graduate students, sometimes you're supported on such grants. Um, okay, let's have a little discussion. Okay. Uh, how many think that cutbacks in NIH or more generally scientific stuff. There's also the, Nash, what is it? The National Science Foundation, things like that. How many think that that's a object to that? Now, oh, okay. Thank you. I see Marcus. I'm taking names.
I would object to
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Understatement of the year, I would say. I would strongly object to that.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Jason, please, I'd like to hear from you. And if you're going to talk, please turn on your video. It's not a requirement, but it would help me. Okay. So Jason, did you? Yes. Hi, Jason.
How's it going?
Really well. Did you have an opinion on the apparent cutbacks to funding of science?
Yeah, I don't know all the specifics, but if it's like a general cutback, then I feel like that's not very good considering a lot of the research being performed could potentially help the administration that's currently at hand also. So, but I don't think they'd be going case by case basis. Yeah, NSF staffing reduced by 12%. So,
Oh, wait, what was reduced by 12%?
Ryan just added that the NSF staffing was reduced by 12%.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
So,
Any more remarks on this?
I could remark one thing. So I do know somebody who had an NSF program, and their NSF program manager was fired yesterday. This person is not very happy about that.
What?
But yeah, but I don't know the extent of the so I've heard these numbers about of 10% people who are probationary, which doesn't, it sounds like it's people that were hired recently. It doesn't mean that they were not hired into positions that were supposed to be permanent. So that's a bit of an issue there. But yeah, they seem to have fired a number of people somehow indiscriminately, just based on recency of hiring.
Okay.
And then I can tell you, for those who don't, I mean, I think you can imagine how the research funding works. So you send a proposal, it gets reviewed, then it gets a good score, it gets reviewed by people at a higher level, and eventually it gets funded. If my study section gets rescheduled for later, it would probably delay the cycle, which means that somebody who was going to get some funds expecting, I don't know, November 2025, they may not get them November 2025, they may get them March 2026, and that may create all kind of issues for people who depends on grants. That's kind of the bigger picture for those who are not familiar with the funding process, which maybe are not. So basically, your GRA in the spring of 2026 may not occur because something was cut today. That's kind of, that would happen.
Well, I'd like to continue this discussion because I think it'll be helpful for us for the course. So, okay. Anybody else have opinions on whether the cutbacks are a good thing or not a good thing?
I mean, I guess it depends on good for who, right? Because like in the context of what we were saying, I don't know, last lecture, maybe 2 lectures ago, whoever comes into power next will pull resources from their opponents. I think the truth of the matter is that especially things like grant funding disproportionately affects things like universities, and a lot of the like higher end universities in this country, from my experience, tend to skew pretty liberal. So I think this is like a pretty reasonable, like sensible way for the party in power to pull resources from their opponents. That's kind of how I see it.
Yes, I hear you, Ryan. And so, okay, so okay, there's a lot of ways we could go with that. And all right. Now, will any of you be personally affected by these changes? So, for example, I have gleaned from the, zeitgeist that also there's been a cutback in what are called overhead expenses. Now, many of you may not know what overhead expenses are. I suspect Jose Luis does know and can tell us what they are.
Yeah, so this is with NIH funding. NIH has a slightly funny way of funding things. You mention a proposal, your budget has what's called direct costs. This is like the salary of somebody. Like, I don't know, I have 20% of my time in this proposal, and it's that much money. And then some things can be charged as direct, and other things are indirect. That's something that the university thinks. But there are things like the building. Somebody has to maintain the building and clean it, or you have secretaries. So it's not direct kind of cost to or somebody has to keep a lab, and the lab has to be, I don't know, they have to have the lights on every day. These type of things. There's a variety of amounts that different universities charge for these indirects. And in NIH, when you create a grant, you do it on direct costs, and then NIH seems to assume the indirects, and those vary from university to university. So the action that happened last week or so, because everything's coming very fast, was to reduce the overheads to 15%.
Okay,
so often universities have like an overhead of about 60%, or like big universities, like big research universities. So reducing 60 to 15% would be like a 30% cut in the total amount of money that the university would get, which is a very serious thing. And I need the kind of research that you do, but I mean, it has USC, there's actually an article in the New York Times. If people want to know about this, there was a great article in the New York Times that computed for every university how much money they would lose. And I think in the case of USC, it was something like $50 million
a year.
The more grant money you have, the more effect you would have.
Of course.
It's in the order of 100 It's quite a few $1 million. So it's not per year.
Just to put some definite numbers on this. So if someone like me or any of you guys who have a grant, you might get $1 million grant. All right. And at universities that have a 60% overhead, which is a lot, I think that means the university gets 600,000 of that to do with it whatever they deem
Well,
appropriate.
it would be more, the numbers would be like this. If you have $100,000, let's say 100 or $1 million in direct costs, then the 60% will get the money just for the government is 100, so $1 million, $1,600,000. So that would be the 60%. 60% of the direct cost.
You're right. So roughly speaking, that would be $160,000 grant. No, excuse me, $1,600,000 grant, and 600,000 of that
That's
goes.
right. That is correct. Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, so somebody do the math for me. So what portion of that?
I think that's about 40. I think about 40% or something.
Okay, thank you.
It is 6 point something divided by 10.
Yeah, that's why I wanted somebody else.
You get the numbers.
1.6.
Okay.
6 point something divided 1.6. Right?
So the order, so you didn't finish it. So the order, so okay, in the current state, let's say, I can't remember USCs, I think it's like 60%. But if it's $1 million and you have 60% overhead, you ask the government for $1 million, 600,000.
Oh, I understand
would
that.
be
but
that was reduced to 15%. So you would only get $1 million plus 150,000. So you got
Gotcha.
like
No.
$350,000.
I'm not confused about that. So apparently, if I used to get $1 million grant, about 400,000 of that would go to the university, who could use it, for example, to build new buildings, support the football team, which I think we all recognize as critical at USC, and or whatever they deemed appropriate. Okay.
Actually,
So that the
wait.
wait. I just want to get the facts on the board. Okay. So the researcher would actually get 600,000. Okay. So when you cut from 60 to 15%, as I hear is being considered, all right, then what happens is, of course, what the researcher gets has not been changed, but what the university gets is dramatically changed. Yes?
Yes.
So that's not correct. Let me clarify this, because you're making a point that is actually not. This overhead, yes, it goes to the university, but it's not used for random expenses like, oh, let's pay something for the football team. Yes, some of that may go there to a general fund, but a lot of that goes just to pay for the maintenance of the building, the rent of the building, the amortization of the machines. So
Okay.
they're not expenses that are like random. Okay, could they be
There's a
lower? Because I think you're making that point. Sure, but I don't know.
well, actually, I think overhead expenses, I don't know this, are what's called fungible. Okay.
Well, okay. I know how it works at ISI. I can tell you exactly how it expenses. I mean, and
Okay.
that pays for the administrative staff. So we have secretaries, we have a department of grants that have to get paid from that overhead because they're not contributing. I mean, somebody does all the budget for the grants. I don't write it, and those people need to get paid. So
Okay.
I think you have to be quite careful of trying to say that this expense, these overheads. Some overhead, I'm sure, can be fungible, and the university can do things whatever they want with it, but others don't. Okay, so don't say that we could. I mean, yeah, we can just do fine with 15% overhead because I think I don't think USC would do fine.
Okay.
So let me say something in supporting Lynn's perspective on this because
Yes.
I can see one perspective he has. So when I first became assistant professor, that was in '94. So it's not many years ago. It's not like 100 years ago.
It's not like it's 30 years ago.
Yeah, in '94, right? '94, I became an assistant professor. So do you know what is the overhead at that time for NSF and H at university? Do you know what's the overhead?
For ISI, for USC?
No. Overhead in 94 for most of the universities. Do you know what's that overhead number?
No, I do not. I don't know.
Okay. I remember the overhead is 30%. Okay.
Okay.
I always have a question at that time that why this percentage change? Because you know the clearly everything become more expensive, but you know people get a bigger grant, and why suddenly this percentage change from 30 eventually gradually to 60 something, right? So when a percentage change, one has to justify, right? They cannot use inflation to justify, right? Because if you have a percentage, if inflation go up, everything go up in the same rate. So it's over the years that the university are trying to, I think they play themselves in a corner too. That I think 66% is just too much. That even for my own sanity, I just think that's crazy, right? But what is 15%? Maybe that's crazy too. but clearly 66% is not unjustifiable. Because you can see over the 30 years, they double the percentage. They suddenly say it's more expensive to support the people who has a grant.
Right. Thank you, Shenghua. Isabel, please.
Oh, I mean, this was before like the discussion about overhead, but I thought like if you were to think about it from like a preme perspective, I would say it's bad because like I feel like universities do a lot of like research that's like very long term, like long tail, and like necessarily there isn't like a guaranteed like success like in terms of like an outcome. So I thought like in terms of like information perspective, like you would want like universities or like some kinds of organizations that aren't motivated by like immediate outcome. So like from green perspective, I think it's bad. But that's just me. Yeah, I just wanted to. But I didn't know we took 60% to the university. So that's a separate calculation I wasn't aware of.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean,
wait.
so well, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'll shut up. I would, because this is getting very political. There are the different things. So what's the right amount of overhead? So different organizations may have different amounts of overheads. And that's a perfectly reasonable discussion to have. So I'm not disagreeing with Shanghai why they have increased. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we are paying, this overhead pays for the salary of the whatever the football coach.
I think with the overhead, the university grew a lot of this. You know, the system of university become more complicated. We have too many associate deans. We have so many vice deans. We have so many of those elements that actually a lot from those things too.
Yeah, so I think there's a perfectly reasonable question of what the right overhead should be or how much overhead should be charged.
15 clearly
grant. But the other point I want to make is like the way to do that discussion is not by passing a unilateral law saying from today there shall be only 15% overhead, which by the way was challenged in the courts and is stopped right now. So it's in limbo. So for people who aren't following that, that is what's happening. So
okay.
Sure. Can universities run maybe with less overhead? And how that, I mean, the same thing with tuition. And there are kind of things at universities that are weird. Tuition has increased a lot, overhead has increased a lot, administrative staff has increased a lot. Are those really justified to some degree? Sure, I think that's a perfectly reasonable discussion to have there. However, the form of doing this in the last 2 weeks is not the right form anyway.
Okay.
Take that, I will say more.
All right. So what we've just had is a political discussion of the sort that are ubiquitous in the world, right? I mean, the world almost runs on these things, right? You know, Russia and Ukraine, you know, you're going to have a political point of view, right? I mean, you may not, of course, but you may. So this is a very appropriate discussion because we're going to address this kind of discussion in what follows, because your professor has cleverly organized that segue. before I segue, um, uh, a remark to my co-host, Professor Biebel, Joe. I'm not good enough at this Zoom thing to keep track of the chats. So would you look at the chats, and if some seem particularly worth discussing, you point them out, or you bring it up? He's okay, so much for that. Let's move then to share screen and do the usual thing. Maybe I'll look at the chats. Let's see. Okay. And a staffing was reduced. Okay, so by the way, as I think was it Nathan or Ryan pointed out, prene-theory says we should expect this kind of thing, right? Because as Ryan points out, universities are quite clearly in a different camp than Trump or Trump supporters, or whatever term we should use. And that side lost. And so we're seeing it suffer the consequences of such a loss. If and when the other side wins, we'll see the opposite. Okay. But I'll start sharing screen now. Yes, so. All right, so I was, I guess, going to start by thanking you for the discussion we had last week. And we were talking about what is a preen really? And it was really helpful to me, and I hope it was edifying for you. Okay, hang on a moment, please. Yes, so I've written down my thoughts here with respect to extinctions. Okay, so you guys raised the issue of whether or not the Chicxulub impactor extinction and the printing press extinction were the same kind of events, whatever that meant. And one thing that I realized was that I misunderstood Henry Graven's remark. Okay. But now I think I get it. So I think what Henry was saying was that the advent of the printing press might have actually killed, that's a little too strong, the oral tradition. Okay. So we know that the Chicxulub actually killed the dinosaurs. It actively did that. So the question is, and this is Henry's remark, did the printing press actually kill the oral tradition in a certain sense? So that sense can be, hang on a second here. Okay, so for example, did the number of storytellers, there used to be things like troubadours and stuff and storytellers, and did that number actually decline and largely go extinct because their audiences can now readily and cheaply get stories out of printed books? Those people go out of business basically because nobody was buying their products. And further along those lines, I thought, has the advent of the internet actually killed the printed book? Right? How many of you buy stuff that's made by on a printing press? Okay, Julian, please.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about um well, I think with the printing press and now with the internet,
Yeah.
that it may have certain how information was transferred. You know, it used to be that information was just word of mouth, and then recently went from books to, digital media. But I think
Yeah.
the amount of information being spread was greatly increased, and these were, non-negotiable goods for the world. For example, like before the printing press, there was a lot less religious freedom. You know, the Protestant Reformation probably would not have happened without the printing press. And this led to ideas like, things that created the United States. Look at like Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Without that, people wouldn't have realized maybe, this island, so many thousands of miles away shouldn't control us, things like that. So I think you gain a huge advantage in how much information you can spread versus
Hmm.
one person can spread, but you do
Hmm.
lose maybe the value that comes with being able to read a book and like, or being able to hear from someone and trust information versus now where you get information from who knows who.
Well, wait a minute, wait a minute. I do buy eh, at least your first premise that the printed book sort of changed everything. And we can see that, for example, in what was it, 1519 that
Yeah,
Luther,
95 Theses, Martin Luther.
yeah, yeah, that without the printing press, the Protestant Reformation probably, who knows, but wouldn't have happened, seems likely. And the printing press, uh, actually, the printing press, the first big thing printed on the printing press was the Gutenberg Bible.
Yeah, the Gutenberg Bible,
And who wrote the Gutenberg Bible, by the way?
the creator of the printing press.
No, no.
It wasn't.
Well, he of course created it, but as I recall, when Luther fled uh, into wherever he went, he fled because he was sentenced to death,
Yeah.
essentially, by the what is now known as the Catholic Church. Then I guess it was the Holy Roman Empire officially that was doing it. But he fled, and I believe there he actually translated the Bible, which existed as in Latin and in Greek, but he actually translated it into the vernacular, which is to say German in his case. And that's what got printed on. That's the Gutenberg Bible, I suspect. Is it written in German?
I know that the St. James Bible, right? Wasn't that the first one to be written in English?
No, King James
Or
Bible.
The
And
King James Bible, King James Bible. I don't know
yeah,
if I'm sure the Gutenberg Bible was printed in German, which I think in and of itself was a Protestant thing to do. So
well,
it did
yes,
help spend, and in Germany, there was like a peasant rebellion that occurred after Gutenberg's Bible was made because people started thinking maybe, maybe people started becoming one more literate and thinking for themselves. Martin Luther's whole idea, I think, was like you make your own interpretation of the Bible versus the
yeah.
context where it's like a
Pre
monk tells you.
solo. There was a word for that. That it's not through priests and everything that you get the truth. It's directly
Yeah.
from the Bible. Okay. And okay, so couple of things. And also, as I recall, the Gutenberg Bible, of which there is one, I think, in
Every
Huntington.
hotel.
Huh?
Oh no, wait, I was gonna say every hotel has one, but I
No,
think
that's the King
the
James
King
usually.
James Bible, yeah.
No, the Gutenberg, an original Gutenberg Bible, is worth many, many millions of dollars. And there is one at the Huntington Museum, by the way. But so somebody run down there and see if it's in English or German. I think it's in German, and it was written by Gutenberg, and maybe I'm written by Luther, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I also think that um, uh, I think it had a picture of Martin Luther sort of on the frontispiece, whatever it's called. Okay, so yes, that's a good example of, Luther was a real good guy in getting a lot of followers, right? He's the modern day equivalent of, well, I don't know who has a lot of followers on the internet, but he's that kind of guy, and he did it early. And he exploited this new technology that we're talking about. And his ideas did go viral. Yes. All right. So, and by the way, how come you know so much about this, Julian?
I'm not actually particularly religious or anything. I just am kind of
No,
just like a
no.
history nerd.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to know. I wasn't. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. I see you, Henry. Okay. But the last line, as a friend of mine once remarked, there are no more bookstores, there's only book museums. Okay. So, we're the paperless society. Where's the printed book going, right? Anyway, Henry, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. That I do think that that is a accurate depiction of what I was saying, but I would add on that I was also drawing as like a distinction between the fact that like one of the events versus like Chicxulub wasn't an evolution, whereas I think that oral tradition becoming written tradition can be seen as an evolution, where one process is written tradition is dominating oral tradition. Where so you can kind of think of it as like upgrading the process of storytelling, whereas Chicxulub is kind of the opposite, preventing the evolution of those things that got killed.
Uh, I'm not sure I see the difference because, in fact, my understanding is that, yes, of course, the dinosaurs got knocked off really fast. But there were other things that eventually succumbed and eventually succumbed over thousands of years, even, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is, you know, a small population could still exist in little pockets, but eventually those pockets would dry up. And so it's not always immediate, even in
Mm-hmm.
the loop.
Okay. Yeah, I guess maybe more so what I meant is that the thing that caused the extinction is the surviving thing in there is like written tradition in the case of written tradition versus oral, whereas
Yeah.
Chicxulub is like an external force driving an evolution. So one is kind of like a domination, the other is just a pressure to evolve.
I agree with you that they are different.
Okay, okay.
But since I've already written these things the way I've written it, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
stick to my point of view. Anyway, but you may be opening the door to a better point of view. Okay, Isabel.
Yeah, so I just had a question about like what like because following up on what Henry just said, how do we define evolution? Because like for whatever reason we thought about evolution as like it's like a repeated copy and then somewhere in the line like we make a mistake, but then that what ends up being better. So I don't necessarily see it as like a dominating dynamic because that's like a very specific dynamic that we're talking about. So I'm not I just wanted to remark that.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Isabel. But another thing is, in our first lecture, we tried to talk about what is evolution, yes? And uh, I, of course, messed up the recording, and so that is gone, yes? Okay, and so we might return to that, but in the interest of making some progress on this political thing we talked about, I'm going to move on. But I think we should have that discussion.
Sounds good.
So yes, let's see. Oh, and then also one of the things I learned from our last discussion, which was really good, if I can figure out where I am. Excuse me. No. Okay, here's where I am. Okay, so that was one thing that I liked. I learned about this extinction thing. There was a second thing that I liked, and that was when we were discussing what is a preen really, and I leered apparently a lot. Okay, in particular, Isabel, I liked your concept of a concept. Okay, and then I liked uh, John Machado's the concept of cars that go faster than the speed of light, right? Uh, and then I guess it was Nathan Dahaki who pointed out that by the definition of preens that I had just given, the empty set was a preen. Okay. And so I think it appears that the concept of cars, the concept, because it's a concept, we can think about it. Cars that go faster than the speed of light is indeed a preen. And in particular, it's the empty preen. And more generally, it seems that all concepts are preens, whatever concept means, and are all just the empty preen, which is kind of, I like it because it's kind of it closes the package pretty well. It doesn't leave any dangling ends. So now I want to finish our detour because we didn't quite make it to the end of what is really a preen. So let's pick up on that. Brian.
So I guess I've had this sort of nagging thought with this like set theory definition of preens.
Yeah.
So like from what I remember, we defined with this new definition a preen as like a subset of the set of all possible things. So
All
by the
possible
definition of a
physical things.
set,
Yeah.
physical things, right? So by the definition of a set, it does not contain any duplicates. So we need some sort of notion, especially because we defined the copy number as like the cardinality of this set. That
Yes.
means that if we have two identical things, that does not increase the copy number. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, okay, how can we have two things that are identical but aren't considered identical? What is our notion of identical? Are we thinking of each realization of a thing as like, the universe has like a finite number of atoms, probably. I think almost assuredly. So do we consider each like distinct realization to be like a configuration of a subset of all of those atoms that are in the, or like subatomic particles or whatever, and we distinguish between otherwise identical things that way, or should we just be considering
I
it?
get your question. I get your question.
Yeah.
And it's a good set theory question, right? So there's two possible ways that occur to me to handle that. One is to start talking about multi-sets, as they're called. You know the concept of a multi-set. It's a set of objects that has repeats. Okay, and we don't need to go into the mathematical organization of that, but there is a concept like that. And yes, it might be better to consider multi-sets. Okay. But I didn't. Okay. Now the second thing is, let's take the preen that consists of all the electrons that exist in the universe, right? Or that could exist in the universe. Okay. Now, what's in that set? Presumably, everything that every electron that actually exists in the universe is in that set. and how many electrons are in it? And probably a lot. But you're pointing out that the use of the word set there is not really capturing what's going on, that it's really a multi-set. Whatever the number of electrons in the universe is, we should note how many it is. It's not just one, but set theoretic notation would suggest it should just be one. So I agree with you. Multi-set would be a better way to go. And so it's a refinement that I think makes perfect sense, but I haven't done it. Okay. And yes, I could have done it, but it's one of those things where, there's so much going on up here that I still don't understand, that going to the next level, yeah, I got more to worry about. But you're right. Okay. Nathan?
I was wondering, um, what if, and maybe this is a little more on the philosophical side, but would you be able to think of two electrons as actually different things, but just completely indistinguishable by all the tools that exist in the universe?
Now you're raising a really good question, and it's is the following. There is an argument that I've seen out there, and it's not one that I recall. It's a physics thing that says, really, oh, Isabel, do you know what I'm headed for here?
Like entanglement, right?
Well, entanglements, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But there's also an argument that says there's exactly one electron in our universe, and it keeps moving backwards and forwards in time, and it gives us the appearance of having a lot of them. Okay, so we're getting into those kind of issues. But it's interesting that I think that in our investigation of sociology, we're starting to run into issues like that. Yes? Okay. So I don't have a really good answer. Now, with regard to what Isabel said, you have this complicated thing that there really, in some sense, according to physics, is no number of electrons in the universe, because we've learned, at least if we believe the physicists, that there's no such thing as a vacuum. And a vacuum's a boiling cauldron of particles bursting into existence and then going away. And in particular, you can, in a vacuum, have an electron and an anti-electron. I guess, is that the positron?
Yeah, positron.
Yeah. Okay. You can have them burst into existence simultaneously. They are entangled, and then they find each other again and annihilate each other. Okay. So at any particular moment, it's quite unclear how many electrons are actually around. Okay. So, but we're not going to resolve all those issues of physics. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get there. All right. So I guess I'll move on a bit. Okay.
While your bed prene and your dinosaur prene are associated with memes, our definition of prenes does not require such an association. This definition of prenes does not require the existence of humans at all and makes it clear that prenes existed before there were humans to contemplate them. For example, with this definition, the set of all possible bacteria that could exist is a prene, and further a prene that had a large copy number long before humans evolved.
Nathan?
Well, geez, this is maybe more related on the set theory side, and I fully believe you've already thought of this, but are there any problems that arise with some of the paradoxes that come with traditional set theory, like Russell's paradox?
Oh, yeah. So, of course, and I think I alluded to them a moment ago, or in a previous lecture, that it depends on how many physical objects that could exist, how large is that set? And there's sort of two pivotal choices: finite or infinite. And if we choose finite, of course, set theoretic issues, well, of the sort you're talking about, won't arise. But if we choose infinite, we run into problems like, more preens than there are names that for them. Okay. But in addition, we run into all sorts of problems, including the the continuum hypothesis, that whether this was our discussion about whether Aleph 1 was equal to 2 to the Aleph null. Okay, so yes, we get all that.
Yeah.
And probably we're not going to be resolving any of those things further soon. Okay. Yes. Okay.
While your bed preen and your dinosaur preen are
Oh, wait.
associated,
We did that one.
there are an enormous number of preens by the definition just given. Due to set theoretic considerations, if there are an infinite set of physical objects that could exist, then there are so many preens that it is not possible to give each a unique name. Most preens are currently of interest to no one. So, what preens are of interest?
Okay. So that's a good question for us. And so what preens are of interest to us? I mean, there's colossal number of preens. People don't care about many of them. So which ones do they care about? Oh yeah, John.
No, I was just going to try to tie this question to what we were talking about in terms of set theory. Maybe you're asking more on the sociological sense, but I was thinking maybe some preens are not computable, right?
In whatever sense we mean by that, but I would be pretty sure the answer is yes.
Right. And so we'd be interested in the ones that are effectively computable.
That's interesting. Okay, I hadn't thought about that. And let me recast what you're saying in my own terms. Yeah, so one of the things that the preems that arise from our memes is that there's a mechanism, it exists probably in our head, where you can go to things you find out in the world and actually mark them. This is in the preen, that's not in the preen. And so in that sense, it is computable, at least among the things you encounter. You can decide whether it's in or out of the preen. Yes? I mean, this is good. And okay, but I've given a definition which would certainly allow us to define things where no computational device could possibly distinguish what's in the preen and what's not in the preen. So you're right about that. And yeah, that's another good thought. And okay, so as human beings, yeah, I can't think of a set of preens that we care about that we can't decide what's in it or not. Your concept of a car going faster than the speed of light, if you walk around the world, you can say whether any physical object you see is actually in that set, right? The answer is always no, but that's pretty computable, right? So where does this take us, John? I mean, it's another interesting thought.
I'm not sure. Only thought so far.
Okay, I like it. I like it. It also gets us into what if a set's only recursively enumerable, for those of you who know it. That, and I don't know the answer, to that, what we should do with all this. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Maybe it's the computable ones that we care about. Okay, that's a good thought. Okay, let's see. Okay, I had a different thought, but yours may be better. Okay. So here's my thought. Let's see.
Here I will freely speculate. What follows is entirely informal. Guided by the laws of thermodynamics, we might expect that each prene is destined to reach an equilibrium copy number. For example, if electrons are genuinely immutable, the electron prene, the set of all electrons, has reached its equilibrium copy number. And if there will never be another dinosaur, then your dinosaur prene has also reached its equilibrium copy number. But for many millions of years, your dinosaur prene had a copy number far above its equilibrium value. Perhaps, those prenes with copy numbers significantly above their equilibrium value for a significant period of time are of interest. See DTD, it's alive.
Okay, so that was what I was thinking. But actually, in many ways, I like what you're thinking better, John. And further, I'm not sure that they're really very different. Okay, so it's one of the vague ideas that I have is that there's no difference between life and computing, living and computing, that those are just the same thing, and that evolution can be viewed as the evolution, at least in some cases, of computation. More sophisticated computers, better algorithms. Okay, but we're going to take the 10-minute break now and rejoin the
I think the set theoretic definition is useful and in some ways more useful than the original definition of a prene, but there is a lot more to figure out. It is another path to explore in Preneland.
Now we're going to turn to mutational power. And we're going to remember mutational power is the power that some people in societies acquire to mutate some of the cultural creeds of the society for some of the members of society. And if you're the Pope, you have huge mutational power. If you're a priest, you don't have that kind of mutational power, but you have some, a considerable amount in the case of a priest. Okay, Isabel.
So I had a question, because so when we talk about mutational power, because I think of like whenever we talk about genes, I feel like a lot of the times like there's not a lot of like intention or purpose, but like when we talk about mutational power in like memes or like in terms of preens, I feel like there's like intention and purpose definitely. So I was just curious like what you thought about it.
Yeah, so I think the intentional purpose that you're talking about is this idea that humans think about it and decide, right? They have intention, all right? And that's a tenable view. But I think it is not the prene-theoretic view. Okay. And so, we can have different views of the same thing. And so I agree, your view that you just articulated, Isabel, is one view that's tenable. You can have the cultural prene-theoretic point of view is probably different. Okay, so the complexity of societies.
The complexity of societies. When a society's cultural preens have chosen a member for a position with great mutational power, they have done their best to assure that the person has the skills and desire to protect them.
Right? That's how you get great mutational power, because you go through all the hurdles that are needed, and those are put in place by the computational preens, the positional computational preens, to make sure that you're that kind of person. Okay.
But as described in How Cultural Preens Acquire People, humans acquire cultural preens from many societies, and each of these cultural preens will compete for the members' resources. This is one of the things that makes societies so complex. Consider the American president. Typically, they will be either Democratic or Republican. In fact, they will usually have acquired a position of great mutational power within their party, and as a result will have demonstrated that they have the skills and desire to protect their party's cultural preens.
Okay, because that's how you get great mutational power. And what's important is the next line.
Becoming president does not make these skills and desires disappear.
Why would it? You get sworn in and suddenly you forgot your commitment to democracy, or you forgot your commitment maybe to, let's see. Your commitment to well, your commitment to the homeless in society. You don't forget those things, right? They don't go away just because you got a new position. You've acquired them, right? And that's true even if you become president. Okay.
For example, it was quite clear in 1860 when Republican Abraham Lincoln and Democrat John C. Breckinridge ran for president that the cultural preens they had acquired from their own parties would have a great impact on their behavior if elected.
Right? So one was anti-slavery and the other was pro-slavery. And it should have been, I wasn't around, you may not believe that, for that election, but certainly the people, one would think, knew that would take whoever won was going to take the country in very different directions. Okay.
Hence, in a society, it is not only the cultural preens of the society that determine the behavior of members, but also the cultural preens members have acquired from other societies.
Okay, so I guess that's pretty clear. I wrote discuss, but I'm not sure it needs it. Okay. You guys know who Constantine was? Okay. What's Constantine famous for?
He moved the seat of the Roman Empire to Constantinople in modern-day Turkey.
Oh, he is very famous for that. You're right. I don't think it was, he actually divided up what was the Roman Empire into an eastern and a western portion. And yes, you're right, in Turkey, in Constantinople. Yes, you're right. But I was thinking of a second thing that Constantine is famous for.
Oh, he introduced Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire, and he
Martini.
converted. Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's what I was getting at. Okay.
Constantine had acquired Christian cultural preens, and then used his mutational power in the Roman society to mutate the Roman cultural preen set in a way that ultimately led to Christianity becoming the state religion. Presumably, if Constantine had acquired Zoroastrian cultural preens rather than Christian ones, the history of the world would have unfolded in a very different way.
Okay, so the story is that right before a battle, I think it was on a bridge someplace, Constantine saw a cross, and that's what led to him converting, we could say, to Christianity. But there were other religions around at the same time, and he could have acquired, for example, Zoroastrianism, which is sort of a monotheistic religion as well. But he didn't acquire those by becoming the Roman emperor. I mean, he acquired those personally. They weren't part of the cultural preens of the Roman Empire. These were ones he brought to the job, and it had a huge impact. Okay.
It is not unusual for those with great mutational power to use it for their own benefit. For example, Octavius accumulated mutational power from many sources over decades. By about 27 BCE, he had amassed sufficient mutational power to change Roman society from a republic to an empire and make himself de facto ruler for life.
So Octavius became the first Roman emperor under the name Augustus. Yes. And that was a pretty big change in the cultural preens of Rome. It was no longer a republic. It's now an empire. Okay. And in particular, it made him de facto ruler for life. Okay. Big change in Rome. All right. So,
it is also not unusual for those with great mutational power to use it to mutate the positional cultural preset to create new positions or remove old ones. For example, when a country is preparing for war, many new warrior positions will be created and filled.
So, if you are in a society where there's a very powerful person who can take the country to war or not, that person is likely to decide to get a lot of warriors, new positions for warriors. Okay.
It is not just those in high positions that use their mutational powers to change cultural presets. Mutational power is the power to mutate some set of cultural preens for some set of members. Those who possess little mutational power in a society may still possess great mutational power in a subsociety. For example, a parent may have great mutational power within a family subsociety. The manager of a restaurant may have great mutational power within that restaurant subsociety. Within these subsocieties, they can mutate the cultural preens in much the same way that Constantine did.
Okay, so, when I was growing up, my father didn't have the power to amend the Constitution or anything. Right? But he certainly had the power to amend my behavior. Okay. So, so just there's all these subsocieties, and you can have powerful mutational power within one and a subsociety without having powerful mutational power in the grander society.
On the internet, we call people who have amassed a large following influencers. Influencers have some mutational power within the society of their followers. For example, some influencers use their power to recommend that followers listen to a particular piece of music or buy a particular brand of clothing.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. Yeah. Okay.
Today, Influencers do not have as much mutational power within their societies as Constantine had in his. For example, they probably cannot send their followers to wars or prisons. However, I suspect that in the near future, we will see internet influencers with very large societies of followers and mutational power comparable to Constantine's.
Okay. So I expect that to happen on the internet, right? And I think we're well on the way to having that happen. Okay.
When this occurs, political parties, nations, religions, and many other societies will no longer be geographically constrained. They will exist in cyberspace. But nothing will have really changed. These cyber societies will still have human members and cultural preens. The cultural preen struggle to survive will still result in preen wars with other societies, and the behavior and emotions of the members will still be greatly influenced by the cultural preens they acquire.
Okay. So that's what I expect we will see in the not too distant future. For example, it's already the case that you may have a stronger relationship to a group of people on the internet who are dispersed throughout the world than you do to the people you physically meet in your own society, right? To your neighbors, the person at the grocery store, right? And I suspect that what I just described here is where we're headed. You guys agree, disagree, have opinions? Everybody accepts that or objects to that? Okay. Well, I think that's, certainly something that we're headed towards. Nathan?
Maybe, sorry, my
Uh,
connection's rough.
Video, please, Nathan. If you don't mind.
Wrong, Nathan. You're talking to Nathan Derhockey right now.
Oh, okay. Did you raise your hand?
No, this is
Who
Nathan
would?
Johnson here. I did not.
Oh, okay. Thanks. So did anybody raise? Oh, yeah. Nathan Derhockey. Say something.
Sorry, my
Help me out
connection
here.
is really bad right now.
Your connection is out?
Yeah, okay, maybe I'll wait for it to get better. I don't know if you could hear me right
Oh,
now.
I can hear you. Yeah, I mean, okay. Well, we can wait. When you figure it out, we'll talk then. Okay.
As an aside, when one considers a family society, it is not clear what role genetic preens play in selecting people to have great mutational power.
Right. So, is a parent in a family acquire their mutational power genetically? And I don't know exactly the answer. We sort of reflected on some of this when we talked about non-human societies like the chimps. But anyway, that's still something I don't have a clear picture of. Okay, now we're getting to what I
Greatness.
think will be interesting.
In 1841, historian Thomas Carlyle published this famous line, Carlyle, 1841. The history of the world is but the biography of great men. From the prene-theoretic point of view, people become great by acquiring positions with great mutational power and exercising that power to create great events. Constantine acquired the position of emperor and had immense mutational power. He used that power to mutate the Roman cultural preen said,
Oops. Sorry.
Cultural preset in favor of Christianity. For many Christians, this is seen as a critical step in a process that ultimately resulted in Christianity becoming the largest religion in the world. Hence, many Christians see this as a great event and see Constantine as a great man. For some Jews, this is seen as a critical step in the emergence of anti-Semitism in Western societies, Wikipedia high. Hence, these Jews may see this as a catastrophic event and see Constantine as a scoundrel. So, which is it, great man or scoundrel?
So which is it? Right?
This is the discussion from the beginning of class, right?
Wait, I'm sorry, what? Yes, this is the discussion from the beginning of class. Right? Yes, and that's why I wanted to get to it. Okay, so which is it? Is he a great man or is he a scoundrel? Your opinions? William?
I would say both, right?
Well, it's what you would say. So yes, both. And why would you say both?
Because it depends on your interest and point of view on Constantine.
Yes, I, I got it. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so let's see. Luke Rashwan.
Yeah,
Wait.
you got it. That was impressive.
Oh, then I'll shut up and not try to say it again.
Yeah, Mel, most of the time people get it wrong. That was perfect. No, I was gonna say largely along the same lines of William. I think like perspective is a big part here because depending on where your perspective is coming from, you could very easily see him or Constantine as like both. Like you could easily see him as a great man or a scoundrel, and I think the differentiator there, or at least a lot of it, is the perspective in which you're looking from and like the party you resonate with.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with that. But I want to go further.
In prene theory, it does not matter. One of the virtues of the prene-theoretic view is that human values are largely irrelevant.
Okay. So it matters to you, these issues, right? But not to a prene theorist. Okay. So to continue.
Irrelevant. With the genetic prene view of biology, it is of little importance whether humans consider a species or individual to be cute, vicious, repulsive, etc. From the genetic prene view, the questions worth asking are those concerning the species' struggle for existence. For example, how the species uses its resources, including its organisms, to survive. Similarly, with the cultural prene's view of the social sciences, it is of little importance whether humans consider a society or individual to be evil, fair, warlike, God-fearing, etc. The questions worth asking are those concerning the society's struggle for existence. For example, how the society uses its resources, including its members, to survive. Consider the democracy cultural prene. Democracy is good, autocracy is bad. This is a cultural prene that assigns values to forms of governance. If you are a member of American society, it is likely that you believe the democracy cultural prene. That belief can have a great influence on your physical and emotional behavior.
Oh, okay. That can have a huge influence on how you physically behave and your emotional emotions. Okay, it's only a cultural preen, but I'm claiming has that power. So here's an example, and we'll say more about this.
For example, presumably Woodrow Wilson's assertion that we were entering World War I to make the world safe for democracy resonated with many future soldiers who held such a belief, and those future soldiers felt pride when they joined up.
Right? I mean, do you think that's what happened? Yeah, and in some cases, for example, those future soldiers, uh, um, ultimately because they had acquired a belief in the democracy cultural preen, of course, perished in that war, right? Okay, so this is what happens. Khalid Indy.
Hi, yes. I had a question about
Oh, Khalid, if you don't mind, video,
oh
not required.
sorry, I'm actually like
Oh,
walking. Sorry, I'll be back in a second.
okay, no problem. Just talk.
So the I guess the question I had was specifically like the you were talking about like in pre like I guess to us like the greatness kind of matters, like whoever, like depending on your view of Constantinople, you might perceive him as great or not. And then
Yes.
genetic preview, it's specifically its only concern is the species struggle for existence, like how I guess the fitness of the how the preen can improve the fitness of the species.
No, well, actually, but I bought everything you said up to that last line. The only thing that matters is the survival of. But go ahead.
I guess that's my question. Like, if in the genetic preen view, are we would is more importance placed on the religion that Constantinople had picked up, or is it more importance placed on Constantinople? So in a sense, is Constantinople the one that's powerful, or is Christianity the one that's powerful for the fact that it had so much mutative power?
Okay, let me. So, okay, so Constantinople, of course, starts out as a Christian.
Oh, sorry, I meant Constantine. I'm so sorry, my bad. Yeah, I meant
Oh,
Constantine.
okay, say it again.
Constantine the one that's powerful, or is Christianity the force of power here?
Okay, so Constantine had a great deal of mutational power within Roman society. And he used that power to mutate Roman society in several ways. One of which was to essentially, he wasn't the first one to actually make Christianity the state religion, but he initiated the steps that led to that. Okay, so that's the power Constantine had. Now, more generally, from the point of view of Roman cultural preset, I think the correct view, or a proper view, is to say that what happened there was that the cultural preset chose Constantine, and he made mutations. And the goal of those mutations, even though Constantine ostensibly was the one that made them, the question worth asking is, did it help Roman society's cultural preens survive? Okay. Did it help the cultural preens survive? And I would say lots of Roman cultural preens did survive. Of course, you know, the religious cultural preens of Roman society were mutated by Constantine. But a lot of Roman societies, cultural preens did survive. And so, and further, we can just see from history that after Constantine, if I got this right, he's ballpark 300 AD, or BCE, or CE, as we now say. It survived for another 160 years. And I might, and now I'm mumbling a little bit because I want to make this point too. Even though, at least by convention, we think that Roman society ended in, I think it's 476. That's just the date that's given for probably good reasons. Even though we think that's true, it's not true that all of those cultural preens that were part of culture of Roman society went extinct at that moment. They had already spread throughout the world. Yeah, they probably would have preferred, I'm anthropomorphizing, that Roman society would have kept alive because they were doing well in that society. But the death of Roman society did not, they had already escaped. They were on their way to all of Western Europe and ultimately to much of the world, like Roman law, Roman means of fighting and stuff. So Kushal, I sort of dragged us into this rant or mumble. Your question, though, let's get back to that.
I think it's starting to. I guess I'm just kind of unclear about which is the from a genetic preen point of view, what is the
Or you mean okay, go on.
Yeah, from a genetic preen point of view, what is the more relevant figure, like Constantine himself, or and his ability to have great mutational power over people, or the religion of Christianity as a preen and its ability to influence people of great mutational power?
I don't think the latter really of your suggestions really works. I think from the prene-theoretic point of view, Constantine, the cultural preens of Rome had certain resources available to them. They had a lot of money. It was pretty wealthy compared to a lot of other places on earth. They had a lot of art. They had a lot of literature. They had great armies, of course, great engineers, a lot of cultural preens. And or anyway, and from the point of view of the cultural preens themselves, these are just resources, as are the members, the Romans. They're just resources. And the cultural preen set is trying to use its resources in an optimal way to keep itself going. Okay. Now, if it does a good job of that, and it isn't easy because there's all sorts of things that want to get rid of you, if it does a good job of that, it sticks around. If it doesn't do a good job, probably it won't stick around. And that's just like genetic, a species. So maybe that's an adequate answer, at least for now, about this stuff.
For sure, yeah, that cleared up a lot for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Isabel?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe ask a question because like are cultural preens like are they like a subset of meme? Like so like because I think of them as like beliefs and then like maybe like here and there you have like genetic components, but I largely think of them as like meme like in terms of like in the larger like preen landscape. I just wanted to like understand where they fit.
Okay. We have at least two definitions, both not perfectly adequate, of what a preen is. Okay. Now, there is the question of given a preen, how is it stored? And it can be stored in lots of different physical objects. But when it's stored inside of a physical object that's a brain, then we say that that physical object is storing that preen. Okay. And in the case of those special things, in deference to Dawkins' definition of a meme, we call those things memes. Okay. And yes, so that's what a meme is. Now, you are interested in memes, and they are very interesting, but they're not the only kind of physical objects. The brains aren't the only kind of physical objects that store preens. Okay?
Yeah, I was curious like specifically for cultural preens.
Mhm.
I was kind of curious because I was like starting to sort of think like conflate the two, like meme and like a cultural preen. So I was wondering like what are some elements that are like maybe more Turin-like or like some other preen-like?
Yeah. So, for example, um, we saw the Hamlet soliloquy preen, and I said it can be stored in brains, like Laurence Olivier's. So we would say Laurence Olivier brain was storing the Hamlet soliloquy preen. And we would say Laurence Olivier has a meme. That's the Hamlet soliloquy. Okay, that's the language that I would use. Now, we also saw that the Hamlet soliloquy preen can get stored in computers. Then we would say of a computer that is storing the Hamlet soliloquy preen that it's storing a terrain. Okay. It's just storing the Hamlet soliloquy preen is what it's storing, but we give it the name that where it's being stored as a terrain because it's a computer. And um, and then we also saw it stored in books and things like that. Okay, and we didn't give a special name to those things that are storing it, those books that are storing it. We didn't call them, beans. BENES, because it didn't seem worth doing. All right. And so I hope that helps, but
Like in terms of like
okay.
Christianity, it would be like Constantine and then like a Bible, because like it's like a book that's storing this like preen. And then I guess like now it's also internet, so it's like Turing as well. Okay, so that helps me sort of like clear things up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right. So let's see. We just talked about the democracy preen. And okay.
The democracy cultural preen is an example of what I call a value cultural preen. Roughly, value cultural preens provide a means of attaching good stickers to some things and bad stickers to others.
So these value cultural preens, in the case of, for example, the democracy cultural preens, it's like you're given a set of stickers, like when you were a kid, presumably. And some of them say good and some of them say bad. And you could go to a map, for example, of the world, and you could put good stickers on all the democracies and bad stickers on all of the autocracies. Yes? So that's what a value cultural preen is all about. Truth, by the way, is also like that. It's just a bunch of values. Okay, so
The democracy cultural preen is an
well, I didn't
example
mean
of
to.
what I call a value cultural preen. Roughly, value cultural preens provide a means of attaching good stickers to some things and bad stickers to others. But when using the cultural preen approach to the social sciences, these forms of governance are neither good nor bad. Preen theory is a scientific theory, and assertions must meet the science society's cultural preen requirements for acceptance. Good and bad as used here are not definable in a way that would pass scientific scrutiny. A preen theorist might ask if there is clear evidence that societies that adopt the democracy cultural preen survive longer than those that reject it. A review of history will show that clear evidence does not exist.
Okay, so back to our discussion at the start, right? You can consider, the things that are going on with NSF funding in this case as good or bad. Those are, whichever side you take is just a value cultural preen that you got that allows you to put the good or bad stamp on things, a sticker on things. Okay. But those things are not scientific things. That is to say, I don't know what a good government or a bad government is in a scientific way. I mean, mathematicians seldom publish proofs concerning, love. Okay. Because they can't define love. It's, humans walk around and talk about it, but there's no mathematical definition. And these kind of value cultural preens don't have scientific descriptions that we could actually contemplate in some society. So if you are doing sociology and you for example start with industrialization, you're a specialist in industrialization, as I think many economists probably are, right? And the history of industrialization, 1750 and on, and its impact on trade and all like this. If you start with the assumption that industrialization is good, that it was a good thing to happen in the world, then you are not doing preen theory. You are doing what we could call conditional sociology. You've conditioned it on an axiom that industrialization is good. Now, if you happen to be an environmentalist these days, you might well take the opposite axiom. Industrialization is terrible. And if you're going to do sociology based on that assumption, you're also doing conditional sociology. Preen theory is the non-conditional version of sociology. Okay? All right. Almost perfect timing. Let's finish by just discussing this, because I think it is a very important thing. It's a way to look at all these zillions of sort of political arguments and say, no, let's try to get down to the basics. Is it working for the cultural presets survival, or isn't it? Okay, Jose, I think there's value in seeing biology stripped of all of these values we put on things, that the bunny's cuter than the, whatever. Biology, when stripped of that, becomes a science that we can consider and contemplate. When societies are stripped of all of these values, this is the view you have, I would say. And that's not a view that sociologists, I think, ever realized they had. And it's analogous to what's happening with the genes. It's all part of the preens and what they do.